everyone and welcome. This is Tutor Lessons, and today we're going to be continuing with the series on quadratics. And following on from our previous lessons, if you haven't watched any of them, you'll see a little pop-up appear above me. Please take a look at the previous videos and start the series from the beginning. Today we're going to start looking at the quadratic formula and the applications of the quadratic formula. And this is all a part of the solving quadratics section. Right, so let's dive in. So the quadratic formula is actually quite a handy tool that you need to have in your toolbox when you're busy trying to solve quadratic equations. The quadratic equation can be pretty tricky to solve if your factors of your coefficients of, let's say, your A term and your C term are really large and it's really hard to factorize. It's sometimes easier to just use the quadratic formula. Alternatively, sometimes you can't actually split your factors up well enough to actually be able to factorize your quadratic. And so this is where we actually use the quadratic formula. So today I want to tackle two simple problems, just the application of the quadratic formula. And then I would like to tackle a more difficult question that relates to my second video, which was on the algebraic fractions. Great, so let's take a look at my first question. So the first question says, x squared minus 10x minus 3 equals to 0. Now we can see that it's in that correct form where the quadratic is equal to 0. And so all we need to try and do is do the brackets. Equal to 0, and then you would continue the process. You got x and an x, and then we take a look at the factors of 3, and then we're like, oh, hang on a second. This doesn't work because the factors of 3 are 1 and 3, and there's no way that these combined will give me minus 10. So here we've got a bit of a problem. How do we solve this? And the way we solve this is by not factorizing in the traditional sense. We need to learn something new. We need to learn the quadratic formula. So what is the quadratic formula? Well, basically it's taking the A, B, and C coefficients from your standard quadratic form, and we're going to put in this really useful formula. It actually derives from completing the square, which I'll be covering in my next video. So let's tackle what is the quadratic formula and how do we use it. So the quadratic formula is x is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And so all we need to do is make sure that our quadratic is in the form equal to 0, the standard way of solving quadratics, and that our coefficients are grouped together so that we have an x squared coefficient, an x coefficient, and a constant coefficient. Now that we've got the quadratic formula, let's apply it to this particular problem. So we see x is equal to, now what is my b coefficient? We see it's minus 10, right? So because it's minus 10, we're going to have minus 10. So I like to just do substitution with brackets. That just makes sure that I don't have any sign errors later down the line when I'm busy doing my algebra. So we've got our square roots, and then here we've got b squared. So again, minus 10 squared minus 4 times by my first term. And we just remember that there is a 1 in front of this x squared. So that is going to be my a coefficient is 1. And my c coefficient is going to be minus 3. If you're ever not sure about your signs, just remember that the sign on the left of a number. Right, so there's the top line of the quadratic formula done. And now we just have to divide by 2 times the x squared coefficient, which is 1. Now that we've substituted into our quadratic formula, all we need to do is type this into our calculator, and we will get this result. 5 plus 2 root 7, and 5 minus 2 root 7. So we'll notice that we're going to have two possible solutions here. Now, depending on the question, they might ask for the exact answer, and that's what you would write here. That's with square roots, irrationals, pi, for instance, in some cases. So that's the exact answer. But if they're asking for your answer correct to 2 decimal places or 3 significant figures, you would round off accordingly. So my first solution will be 10.3. And my other solution is going to be equal to negative 0.291. Now that we've done our first question, let's move on to the second question. And what I would like you to do as the viewer is to pause your screen once I've written down the question, attempt it yourself and see if you get the same answer as me. Then we can move on to the more complex question, the third question. Right, so question 2, let's take a look. So here I'm going to do 5x squared plus 7x minus 2 equal to 0. So here we can see it's also a little more tricky because we have a term which is 5, so it's not a term 1, an x squared coefficient of 1. So sometimes people find it easier to just do the quadratic formula instead of trying to go through the motions with all the factorization that you'd have to do, or the more difficult factorization. But here we're just going to go straight into using the quadratic formula. So we're going to say x is equal to minus 7 plus minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times by my a term, which is 5, times by minus 2, which is my c term, and all of that is going to be over 2 times by my a coefficient, which is 5. Right, and then we solve using our calculators. And once you've got it in your calculator, all we need to do is write down the exact answer first. So we get minus 7 plus the square root of 89, and that is all over, that's plus minus, sorry, all over 10. And from here we can then write down the rounded off values that you would be expected to write down in your exam or test questions. And so my first solution is 0.243, or my second solution is equal to minus 1.64. And there we go. If you got this correct, well done. You now know how to use the quadratic formula effectively. So we're going to take a look at a more difficult question now, which relates to algebraic fractions. So let's take a look. So we've got 5 over x minus 3 plus 2 over x plus 1 equal to 1. So what I would like you guys to do, same as the previous question, give the video a pause, attempt it, and see if you can actually solve this particular question. Hint, we might be needing the quadratic formula here. And then once you've got your answer, resume the video and see if you got the answer correct. Great, so let's get started. So what we learned from the second video is that we need to get rid of our denominators. So to do that, I'm going to multiply every single term by the denominators of the fractional terms. All right, so let's do it. So I'm going to have 5, x minus 3, x plus 1, all over x minus 3, plus 2 times by x minus 3, x plus 1, and that's going to be all over x plus 1, and that is equal to 1 times by x minus 3, x plus 1. And what we should be able to realize is that these denominators will now cancel from the fractional term. So there I've got those ones cancelling and these ones cancelling. Right, so now that we've cancelled our denominators, we're going to expand, simplify, take everything over to the other side, because that's how we solve quadratics. We've got to make it equal to 0. And then we need to identify whether or not we should factorize or use the quadratic formula. So let's take a look. So 5 is going to expand, and we're going to get 5x plus 5 plus 2x minus 6, and that is equal to x squared plus x minus 3x minus 3. And that I used FOIL to expand, where we have the first terms, outer terms, inner terms, and last terms being multiplied and then added together. And then we have our c term, which is minus 2, and all of this is going to be over 2 times 1. Right, and then the next step is to plug this into your calculator and get your answers. And we'll see the answers that we're going to get will be in the form of 9 plus minus the square root of 69 all over 2. And then what we need to do is get our answers correct to the correct number of decimal places or significant figures. And so we check on our calculator and we get the following values. X is equal to 9.22, or our other solution where x is equal to minus 0.217. And here we have solved our 3 questions using the quadratic formula. I hope you guys found this lesson pretty handy. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment section below. If you found this video great, thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, thumbs down with a comment as to what I could have done better. And if you really like what we're doing at Forrester Tutoring, please subscribe to our channel and click the little bell icon so that you can actually get notifications of any future videos that we post. Thanks for watching. Cheers.